Hey guys, it's Ghost Queen. That was a lame one. A lame one with the fan tonight. So, hi. What's up? Um, I've been having technical difficulties, so you're going to have to forgive me. Uh, Yesterday, I had planned on streaming in the evening, and I went to try to stream, and oh, I got to turn my phone down. And it just it was giving me an error message, and I thought what the error message said was, "Hey Mary, hey Teresa, thanks guys for coming to mod." I thought what the error message said was, you can only, essentially, if you have the free version of StreamYards, you can only stream once a day. That's what, it flashes so quick, you don't even have time to fucking read it. So I was like, what is that saying? What is that saying? Wayne was trying to help me for a second. And so that's why I thought I couldn't stream last night. I thought it was saying if you're not paying for Streamlabs, and it's just not StreamYard, Streamlabs. If you're not paying for it, then it's just you can only go on once a day. And I had already been on once yesterday. That's what I thought the deal was, and that's why I didn't stream last night, okay? So I kind of made the decision to start paying for some streaming software because I really wanted to anyway, because you can do more interesting things. You have access to more features and stuff. And Wayne's paying for, the one on his. So, but I hadn't done that yet. I didn't sign up for it yet. And I was thinking, instead of doing this one, I'll do the one that, we had decided to do on Wayne's computer so that we'll both have the same one. But I hadn't done it yet because I thought I could just, this is all set up, and I figured I could just sign on with this one just for tonight, right? Excuse me while I take a little sip of Coke. Then I started trying to sign on tonight, and this is why I'm running late. And it was saying the same thing, and I'm like, what the hell? I didn't stream today. So I'm like, and it said, if you keep getting this error message, try signing out and signing back in. So I finally did that, and then that worked. And then I'm here. But oh my God, this software has been driving me nuts. So hi. Um, so gave Nixie her first bath today. I know a couple of you guys, my mods, I know, checked out that little cute video. She did so well. And she smells like a little baby powder puff now. So that's nice. Yeah, I know. Believe me, I know, Mary. So, yeah, it was I actually was cleaning all day today, like a spring cleaning in bulk sort of thing, just like clean, 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 get the house fresh and clean. Plus, with a new puppy in the house, it's like she does have accidents and stuff, so I've been mopping and whatnot, and busy day doing all that. Of course, I took a little time out to do my little drama video, which I don't like to do things like that, It's not. I know on YouTube, at least, there is a lot of drama, and I know a lot of people get into the drama, and I get it. We all like a little good drama once in a while. But me personally, I only like lighthearted drama. I don't like hurtful drama, and I don't like to get like that, and the only time I ever get like that is when I feel like my back is up against a wall, which is sort of how I felt in this situation. This person isn't being fair to me. I'm going to defend myself. If someone's out and out lying about me, like telling flat out lies, I'm not going to just sit here and take it and keep my mouth shut. I'm going to say something. So, I can only guess at this person's motivations. It doesn't even matter, but I just have to make sure I nip it in the bud. If you don't stand up for yourself, people will just take advantage of you. No, not at all. So that was wrong, and of course I'm going to say something. So that's that. I don't really need to talk about that anymore. I've already said all I need to say about it in that video. Um, you know, there were a couple other people who sort of jumped on that bandwagon. I've blocked them. Now I just know, okay, I'm not going to interact with those people because I get it. We support our friends and whatnot, but hopefully, if our friends are doing something wrong, we don't support them when they're doing something wrong. And if we know that they're doing something wrong, and that was not cool what she did. So whatever, that's that. Moving along. So catching up on gossip. Right. It's just free promo. It's just, you know, they're just trying to ride off my back, like, not that I'm like this huge person, but clearly they think I'm interesting to talk about, whether it's positive or negative. They're just using me for something interesting to talk about. So, but they're creating bullshit drama that doesn't exist. That's not cool. So, and that's not the first time people have done that to me. I dealt with it with, on here too. So, anyway. Um, Onision's been streaming maniacally for days. I caught a few of them, but I couldn't watch all of them. It's too long. It's not interesting enough for me. Won't hold my attention for that long. I caught a couple of them, and then eventually I just was like, I can't even watch any more of this shit. So I don't know if any of you caught any of those streams. I mean, I don't even know how many he uploaded, like 8 million videos. So, yeah, I'm just kind of losing interest. I don't know what else to say about that. I'm losing interest. Um, so that's that story. Uh, what else was I going to mention tonight? I don't know. That stupid drama just was taking up a lot of our focus and attention, and both of us were getting irritated and mad and frustrated. And, the field can be discouraging sometimes. It really can. And I've been through that sort of feeling many times. It can be very discouraging at times, especially when it's supposed to be like a spiritual type field. And we're like, God, these are not spiritual people. They're just nasty. What are people like this doing in the field? You know what I'm saying? So it does. It gets disheartening at times. It gets a little discouraging and disheartening at times, and you just gotta get through it, I guess. So yeah, um, pretty relaxing day. Wayne and I went out and got some pizza, and even that wasn't that great. And we're both kind of in shitty ass moods, so I'll try not to pass it along. Yeah, and yeah, I know like there was some drama in the drama community this that I caught just very briefly this morning. I'm not even going to talk about it. I actually kind of stuck my nose in where it didn't belong. And then I apologized for doing so. That's the great thing about making mistakes, people, is if you make a mistake and you're an adult, you can just say, hey, you know what? I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. It usually works. People usually go, oh, well, that's okay. No biggie. You know? People usually forgive you if you can just say you're sorry. But not everybody can. Not everybody can admit fault. Not everybody can say they're sorry. Um, and some people just are so quick tempered that even if you try to apologize, they won't accept it. Um, I had an instance of that last year where somebody in the paranormal, a female, not in this country, another country, I said something on one of her videos. She got offended. And I think it was like the next day I tried to apologize and she wouldn't even read it. And I was like, oh my God, this is so not grown up. If you can't even read my apology, like if you're that hot headed, it ain't gonna work. Because nobody's perfect, you know? There's nobody that doesn't ever make mistakes. We all make mistakes. So, there you have it. Yeah. It's just that whole drama. I mean, I will say, like, it really does kind of just disgust me that there's just like a whole group of people being very insulting and just running with this narrative that I bullied a child, which of course I didn't bully a child. I certainly didn't bully that child, and I haven't ever bullied any children, but I didn't say one word about that little girl except when I did my stream defending myself, and I said she looks like a lovely young lady, and I'm sure she's perfectly charming. Like, that's all I said. I've never even seen the kid, like, other than a photograph, you know? I saw one photograph of her, big whoop. Like, I don't know anything about the girl. It's not the point. She's not the point. The point is the standard of children investigating. I don't agree with it. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it should be encouraged, and that's that. I said all I need to say about it. So to then go around and start slanderous rumors saying that I am bullying a child, that's a pretty serious accusation. That's like if you went around and accused somebody of being like a pedophile. I mean, it's serious. It's slanderous, and I'm not going to tolerate it. I'm not going to tolerate it. If you're going to accuse me of bullying a child, you better start showing the proof of me bullying a child, because there isn't any. So, that's that. Um, yeah, and I took particular offense to it because those of you that know me know that I'm actually, you know, very protective of children and animals, and that I really took really a lot of offense to that. And it was a really slanderous thing to go around saying. So, yeah, just people are just really distasteful sometimes. Not everybody, but some people. So, that's that story. But it was stressful. It's stressful dealing with bullshit drama that people create out of nothing for no real reason. Um, it's just everybody just loves to just jump on people and be assholes, for other agendas too. Like, a few of those people involved clearly had some sort of beef with me that they hadn't expressed to me before. And they just took this as an opportunity to pound me into the ground. If you have a problem with me, I'm always here. You can always come and talk to me. Sure, we can work it out. Like, there's no reason to, like, wait for something. Like, I'm waiting for you to screw up because the minute you do, I'm gonna smash you. It's just, come on. That's not very professional, and it's not very adult. So, yeah, exactly, Mary. So, that was unfortunate, that whole situation. But, it'll be blown over. It's already starting to blow over, and it'll be blown over soon. So, moving along. What else was I going to mention tonight before I start into the Sims thing? Um, you remember how I told you I ruined all my eyeshadow brushes? I picked up a couple of new ones tonight, just from Walgreens. And they're just like Wet and Wild. They're not pricey brushes. But I just needed some new eyeshadow brushes, and I just liked these. I thought they were so pretty because they have just like a white plastic brush, and that way I don't have to worry about them getting wet and going through that same problem again. And then they've got that nice little pretty pink tip. I liked those. Sorry, I'm losing my voice from yelling. yelling and allergies, and I'm a mess. Anyway, aren't those pretty? And they were pretty inexpensive. Wet and Wild, they're cheap, you know. So I like those. So I'll be trying those out. And then I picked up, remember I was talking about the magnetic eyelashes and how hard I find they are to put on, because it's like it's two eyelashes, and basically like one on, you put one on top of your eyelash, one on the bottom, and then they click. They the magnets stick together. I finally figured out a way to get them on easily last night, which is if you actually curl your eyelashes first and maybe just dab on a tiny bit of mascara so that your eyelashes are already a little stiff and curled upward, you can then sort of set the magnetic big eyelash on top of your own natural eyelash, and then just kind of pop the bottom one on. And it works that way. So I had finally figured it out last night, and I went and did it, and like one of the magnets was missing off one of the eyelashes. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I haven't even worn these yet. So when we were in Walgreens tonight, I picked up a new set of magnetic eyelashes, but then I got them home, and it's like a whole different kind. So I liked these because they had more magnets, because the last pair only had 3 magnets. This pair had 5 magnets. And I'm like, I like that a little bit better. But when I got them home, it turns out you actually, it's only one eyelash per eye. There's no bottom magnetized eyelash. So what you need to do is you need to buy this magnetized eyeliner liquid. And so you do the eyeliner on your top lid, obviously at the lash line, and then the magnetic lashes actually magnetize to the eyeliner, which is a pretty good idea. It sounds good if it works, but I didn't buy the eyeliner because I didn't know. So I'm going to have to pick up some of the magnetized eyeliner now to try this new one. So no eyelashes tonight. We're going without. I wasn't in the mood for gluing any on, and I just didn't put any on tonight. So that's that story. Yeah. So what else? It was a beautiful day here today. It finally like wasn't raining. It was sunny. It was warm. It was a really nice, lovely day. I got outside for a little bit. Um, I couldn't spend too much time outside today because I was just busy doing stuff in the house. But it was nice to get out in the weather a little bit. And it was just comfortable and sunny, and it can rain so much here during the winter time that I miss the sun, and sometimes I just got to get outside and get my face in the sun. So that was nice. Did that today. So I think that's pretty much about it. I don't have any major other stuff really to talk about. So I'm going to go straight into The Sims now. I did see some other interesting cases and stuff, but I'm not going to get into that because I want to finish with this one before we start on something new. So, the bulk of the information that I was able to find on the Sims family murder case came from one particular source. And it's a person who blogs. I don't know anything about the person who wrote this blog. Actually, now I'm curious about the person who wrote the blog, and I know nothing about them. And I haven't attempted to research them at all. But essentially, they have a blog on WordPress, and it's called I Did It for Jody. I don't know what that means. I haven't read any of their other blogs either, so I don't know like what they do, or if they're always doing like, true crime, or who they are or anything. But I mean, you can see here I have a stack of paperwork because I printed out the whole blog regarding the Sims family murder case. So this is where I got the bulk of my information, other than the documentary. Okay. And this is what I found so interesting. Now, there are some other sources that I did refer to, and when I talk about them, I'll quote what they are. But I'm just going to start with this because there's so much information here. Now, this person basically, they start out the blog just kind of describing the crime. And I'm not going to go over that because we've already gone over it. Hey, Charmy. Now, essentially, they say the reason why they're writing this blog in the first place is because they have a fascination with several cold cases. And they tell which ones, and they're all they all took place around the 60s. And I don't even know if it's a man or a woman who writes the blog. So that's why I'm using the pronoun of they. But basically, they're talking about the cases that they have a fascination with are the Bowles family in Crestline, the Bricka family in Cincinnati, and that's Crestline, California, and that murder took place in 65. The Bricka family in Cincinnati, Ohio, and that murder took place in 66. The Sims, which is the one we're discussing, and the Robinson family murder, which took place in Goodhart, Michigan in 1968. The Arellano family in Loma Alta, Texas, also in 68. And the Dumler family in Cincinnati, Ohio in 1969. And they just talk about how, they actually have their Google alerts set up to receive information anytime something new comes out about these cases. And, and then they also periodically check the web. Now, this blog was written, I believe, like, I don't want to misquote myself, but I think it's around 2015 is when this was written. I'm trying to see if there's a date on here. Yeah, I don't see a date, but that's when the comments started, was in 2015. So I'm pretty sure that's when the blog came out. The first comment is dated August 28th, 2015. So I'm assuming that's when the blog was written. Okay? Now, as I say, it starts off just kind of describing the murders, and I'll just touch on it again, just to refresh anybody's memory or for people who didn't see the documentary. So the Sims family was a family that lived in Tallahassee. It was Dr. Robert Wilson Sims, who was 42 years old, and his wife, who was 34. They had come from Mississippi originally, but they had moved to Tallahassee, Florida, and they had 3 daughters, 2 teenage daughters, and then their youngest daughter was 12, Joy, and so it was Dr. Sims, his wife, and their 12-year-old daughter, Joy, are the 3 that were killed. And their 2 older daughters were both out babysitting, Virginia and Judith Ann, and then one of the daughters came home. There was a football game that night, which a lot of the people in the town were at the football game, and it was a very big deal. It was a very small town at the time. This is, back in the 60s. It was a real small, quiet little, family-friendly town. They didn't have much crime, and it was 17-year-old Virginia who came home and found her parents and sister in the master bedroom, and they had been slaughtered. So this is, the general facts of this case, and it was never solved. So it said, just to describe the scene of the crime when Virginia came home from babysitting and found them in the master bedroom, it said Dr. Sims was wearing trousers, a sports shirt, socks, and shoes, and he was lying atop a flowered bedspread on the couple's king-sized bed. He'd been shot once in the head. His wife and daughter lay at an angle on the room's beige carpet. Mrs. Sims was barefoot in pink slacks and a blouse and had been shot 3 times, twice in the head and once in the leg. Joy Lynn was in her nightgown and had been shot once in the head and stabbed 6 times in the torso with a large hunting or butcher knife. Okay? Now, I happen to know from just my own research that oftentimes when you have that kind of stabbing and it's a little bit overkill, it usually implies like passion, you know, it's like there's emotions in there. And it says all 3 Sims had been trussed and gagged with household items variously described as neckties, socks, hosiery, or lingerie, and both Dr. and Mrs. Sims had been blindfolded. Some newspaper accounts state Joy Lynn was blindfolded as well, and others imply that she wasn't. Now, Virginia, you know, back then, there actually wasn't an ambulance service. I don't know if you remember that. Hey, John, from the documentary, but like there wasn't an ambulance service back then. So she actually called the local funeral home, and you know, there was no like 911, and you know, she didn't know who to call. So she called the local funeral home and she said, something terrible has happened, please come. Now this happened around 11:15 at night is when she came home, and let's see, I'm trying to find the date. October 22nd, 1966. That's the date of the murder. Okay? So, when she did first enter the master bedroom, her parents were still alive, but just barely. And her daughter, her sister, the 12-year-old little girl, was already deceased. She immediately called the Beavis Funeral Home for an ambulance, which was the custom in Tallahassee at the time. Russell Beavis raced to the scene with his son Rocky, who was then 16. Now, Rocky, as an adult, as an older gentleman, spoke in the documentary. Dr. Sims expired shortly after the Beavis' arrival, but Mrs. Sims was transported to the hospital where she was kept under guard. Little Joy Lynn had been killed instantly. It was reported in the Holland Evening Sentinel on October 24th by Leon County Sheriff William Joyce that there was money in the house, but it had not been touched. There was no evidence of forced entry. Nothing of value was missing. There were several small sums of money visible on the dresser, and an expensive coin collection lay intact in a bedroom drawer. The only neighbor who'd noticed anything amiss was a Muriel Court resident who'd heard high-pitched screams at approximately 10:45 p.m. Attributing the clamor to frolicking children, the neighbor failed to contact police. Not so much as an ashtray had been moved as far as we can tell, the sheriff was quoted as saying. And the first lawman on the scene was Larry Campbell, an investigator whose 50-year career in Florida law enforcement would culminate in several terms as Leon County Sheriff. At the time of the Sims murders, he was 24 years old and the lead detective on the case. Now, that's really young. As was par for the course in the 60s, Campbell failed to secure the crime scene, and nearly 1,000 people tromped through the Sims home in the hours after the family was slain. That's a little hard to believe. 1,000 people is a lot of people. But if that is even close to accurate, then you can imagine how contaminated the crime scene was. Um, it says here that the Rocky Beavis, the son of, who was 16 at the time, the son of the funeral home director, said that they went in and made coffee. It was probably textbook what you shouldn't do. Um, at Tallahassee Memorial Hospital, Mrs. Sims' prognosis was grim. One of the bullets in her brain was too deeply lodged to be extracted, and she was placed on a respirator. As armed guards stood death watch, local businesses did a brisk business in security accoutrements and guns of every caliber. The seemingly random slaughter of the respectable, well-liked family incited a community panic. Though the sentiment may be trite, the substance is true. To this day, many natives cite the Sims murders as the moment the city of Tallahassee lost its innocence. And we did hear about that in the documentary. They said up until that point, they really hadn't had any serious crimes. People didn't lock their doors. People would even go away on vacation and not lock their homes up. That's how safe of a community it was. But after this, everything changed. This murder changed the entire landscape of the city. So, it says, we woke up one morning and all of a sudden we were in an evil world. That's what the sheriff was quoted as saying. Mrs. Sims lingered for 9 days, never regaining consciousness. So she just was essentially in a coma and she never woke up or came out of it. On October 31st, Halloween, she joined her husband and youngest daughter in death. Unsettled by the killer in their midst, city officials took the unprecedented step of canceling trick-or-treating. In the aftermath of the Sims murders, the holiday's faux fright was superfluous. Genuine terror stalked the streets of Florida's capital. From the Tuscaloosa News, October 30th, 1966. This Halloween, 1966, the night of spooks and goblins, will be one which the children and grown people of Tallahassee will not soon forget. One when the game of fear became a stark reality. So, as I say, this did forever change the town. You can imagine it, if you lived in this very safe town, very safe community, very family-oriented community, and then suddenly there's this horrific, gruesome murder, and they had absolutely no idea who did it. They didn't really have any suspects. They had no clues, and everyone just was suspect. It's like when you're that suspicious, you don't know who it is, and you don't trust anyone, and it just becomes a whole sort of atmosphere of fear. So it did really change the town. Okay, so it says the investigation slogged onward. The Sims social circle was interviewed. Nearby woodlands searched and a pond behind the home drained. Nothing of any evidentiary value was discovered. Grasping at straws, detectives tracked down patrons who'd borrowed in cold blood from the Tallahassee Library. You were 6 in 1966? Yeah, I hadn't been born yet. I was born in 68. But, so they tracked down people who had checked out in cold blood from the library, theorizing that the crime may have been inspired by Capote's masterpiece. All avenues of investigation, both literary and conventional, led nowhere. So that's how desperate they were to try to solve this crime, is they thought maybe somebody had gotten the idea from reading that book. So they investigated whoever checked out the book and read it, which of course now seems silly to us, but this was a long time ago. Everyone was identified and checked out, including 3 men from Wyoming who had been here to see Sims, the piano tuner, the Fuller brush man, and the maid. The murders had occurred at a particularly inopportune juncture. An FSU, Florida State University, football game and the North Florida Fair had summoned hundreds of strangers into the community in the hours before the crime. This profusion of potential suspects slowed the investigation, but local gossips, untroubled by such technicalities as evidence or probable cause, had settled on a scapegoat of the homegrown variety, Helen Sims's former boss, Pastor Cecil Albert Roberts. So essentially, that's kind of who the first suspect was. Mrs. Sims had resigned from her job at First Baptist Church only days before the crime. And C.A., as he was known, had a reputation as a ladies' man. So the pastor at the church where she worked was flirty and had hit on a lot of women. To town gossip mongers, the pastor's roving eye and the timing of Mrs. Sims' resignation seemed portentous. When Pastor Roberts had the audacity to call Mrs. Sims by her first name while officiating at her memorial service, the rumor mill began to churn apace. So here's a picture of Pastor Roberts, who they called C.A. I'll show you here. The ladies' man. Let's see. So that was the pastor that Mrs. Sims worked for. C.A. Roberts, however, had an airtight alibi for the night of the murders. As the FSU team chaplain, his appearances in the game's film coverage were myriad. Detectives calculated the pastor lacked time between cameos to slip away and commit the crime. Furthermore, investigators were unable to unearth any evidence of an affair between the pastor and Mrs. Sims. By all accounts, Dr. and Mrs. Sims were inseparable. Not so easily cowed by facts and the laws of physics, local busybodies continued their campaign of slander. Pastor Roberts soon resigned and left town, his career in shambles. So, look, here was a man who was most likely had nothing to do with the crime, but because he was the local pastor and because Mrs. Sims had worked for him and because it was such a small town and everybody liked to gossip, his reputation was ruined and his life was ruined. So this crime affected a lot of people. This may sound weird, but it looks like a face in the curtain behind you, Heather. Pops up once in a while. Oh, really? I don't know. I think it could just be reflection because I'm seeing some reflection because it's sort of silver metallic. As I move, there's a reflection behind me. Okay. The sheriff said, "There's no doubt in my mind that C.A. had nothing whatsoever to do with the murders. He was just a victim of circumstance and his own foibles." The day after the murders, a woman attempting to place a phone call on a party line. Now I'm going to stop here in case anybody doesn't. Now, you ladies, some of you older ladies in the chat my age, might know what a party line is, but maybe not everybody knows what a party line was. So back in the days of no cell phones and corded telephones, there was such a thing as party lines. In a lot of smaller towns, you had these. Maybe not everybody had. I'm trying to remember why we had party lines. I'm pretty sure, as I remember, it was because not everyone necessarily had their own private line to the house. And so rather some lines were sort of connected. So what this meant was if you were on a party line, you could pick up your telephone to make a call and you might hear your neighbor was on the phone. And if that were the case, you would have to put the phone back down and wait for them to be finished before you could make your phone call. Now, my grandparents, I think, had a party line for a little while, and I think I used to summer in Maine growing up, and I think we had a party line at our summer house. Um, yeah, and it was funny because you could actually, like, really, you could eavesdrop on the conversation if you wanted to. And I'm sure many people did. Um, and you can see, like, old black and white movies, they have jokes about that, the party lines and everything. Anyway, so it says here the day after the murders, a woman attempting to place a phone call on a party line accidentally heard snippets of a stranger's conversation. Imagine. Mother, I have just done a horrible thing. I have killed 3 persons. A young man intoned with oddly precise dictation. With the rudimentary technology of the time, the telephone company could only ascertain the call had originated from one of 200 lines in Brevard County, approximately a 5-hour drive south of Tallahassee. Although some media accounts claim the inadvertent eavesdropper also heard information known only to the slayer, this detail is unconfirmed, and the crossed party line is rarely mentioned in contemporary accounts of the crime. If you were conversing, a party line was a local telephone loop circuit that was shared by more than one subscriber. There was no privacy on a party line. If you were conversing with a friend, anyone on your party line could pick up their telephone and listen in. Yeah. So I guess I pretty much got it right. um, we've ruled out robbery. I've definitely ruled out actual robbery and sexual assault. That's from the sheriff in the St. Petersburg Times. Um, excuse me. So it says a schism began to form within the investigation. Sheriff William Joyce was adamant Lustmord played no role in the murders, but Ed Yarborough, director of the Florida Sheriff's Bureau, disagreed, telling the Palm Beach Post the crime was the work of a sexually deranged person, a sex maniac. So essentially, Sheriff William Joyce didn't think it was a sex crime, but the director of the Sheriff's Bureau did think it was a sex crime. Interestingly, Leon County investigators maintained the murders lacked a sexual element for decades, yet a 2006 Ocala Star-Banner article revealed that Joy Lynn's panties had been pulled down, and indications, although they didn't say what indications, of molestation were present. The reason for this discrepancy is unknown, but I think certain people might sort of think it sounds a little bit like a cover-up, doesn't it? So it says there are many types of perverts. Ed Yarborough, Florida Sheriff's Bureau, told the Palm Beach Post. So, with financial and romantic entanglements eliminated as motives, the investigation into the Sims murders stalled. The last investigatory lead of note occurred in 1980, when Leon County Sheriff Ken Katsaris announced he was reopening the case. Acting on a tip, Sheriff Katsaris learned a death row convict in another state had Florida ties. The man was known to the Sims, and the murders for which he'd been condemned were akin to the Sims murders. So he was convicted of a different murder or murderers, but they were similar. I saw similarities in the crimes, both of them seemingly senseless without motive, he told a reporter from the Sarasota Herald Tribune. The sheriff declined to name the convict in question or give any other identifying information, however, and the lead apparently came to nothing. The Sims murders remain unsolved, a blight on the reputation of Tallahassee law enforcement. It still kind of depresses me after all these years. I didn't feel like myself all day, the police chief, Robert Mage, upon revisiting the crime scene, told the Sarasota Herald Tribune on October 29, 1973. And here, the verifiable history of the Sims murder investigation ends. Yet, our blog post is just beginning. Come dance with me on the edge of a libel lawsuit. I promise I won't let you fall. So, in many ways, the Sims murders are incestuously intertwined with the career of Larry Campbell, first detective on the scene and subsequent long-term sheriff of Leon County. A strident voice in all facets of Sims media coverage during his reign, Sheriff Campbell claimed to be haunted by the murders and often cited his failure to bring the perpetrators to justice as his greatest regret after 5 decades in law enforcement. I've seen some terrible things in the 45 plus years of law enforcement, but I can still see Joy's eyes as clear today as I sit here talking to you, he said to the Sarasota Herald Tribune in 2006. Though he lacked sufficient evidence for an arrest, over the years, Sheriff Campbell made no secret of the fact he developed two prime suspects in the crime, a local teenaged couple I shall not identify for reasons both legal and moral. I will. Because obviously the whole documentary we already shared talks about them, and that is this gentleman, Vernon, and then the woman that they refer to as, oh my God, it's now just completely left my mind. She has a nickname. Oh, what is her nickname? It'll come to me in a minute. She's got the funky nickname. She's the one who went to all the funerals and everything. It's going to come to me in a second. Give me a minute. Okay. The female suspect, then 19, was the daughter of a janitor at Florida State University. The then 20-year-old male suspect, son of a famous Florida State University criminology professor, dwelt on the street behind the Sims home. The placement of male suspect's residence, instead of male suspect, I'm just going to say Vernon, because Charlie, thank you, Teresa. We know they're talking about Vernon and Charlie, so instead of male suspect, female suspect, I'm just going to say their names. Okay. With the, caveat of saying neither have been charged with a crime and, but they talk about this in the documentary. So I'm not saying that they're guilty. I'm not saying that they're even identified suspects, but it's been said by others that this is who they're talking about. So, okay. The placement of Vernon's residence is significant, as investigators had long theorized that the assailants approached from the woods behind the Sims house. Rear entry would explain why Muriel Court neighbors saw neither visitors nor unfamiliar vehicles the night that the Sims were murdered. So essentially what they're saying is he lived behind them, and so that might be, if he was the murderer, that's why nobody would have seen anything, because he would have just snuck in from behind the house and nobody would have seen. The existence of two perpetrators also comports with initial theories. I don't know what's wrong with my mouth tonight. The identical granny knots which bound the victims were tied so tightly, investigators doubted the family had tied each other at gunpoint. Although it's certainly possible the family was forced to bind each other and a lone assailant then retied the knots. There is no apparent reason why the Simses should have been targeted. It was a very middle-class church-going family. According to the neighborhood scuttlebutt, the suspect couple were odd. although the depth of this purported deviance varies upon the telling. The pair reportedly had an interest in funeral homes and necrophilia, and Charlie was said to have closely followed Sheriff Campbell as he investigated the crime, dogging his every move. She had a fascination with death and funeral homes. First responder Rocky Beavis describing Charlie. In Sheriff Campbell's estimation, the motive for the Sims murder was paraphilia. Vernon was sexually fixated on Joy Lynn, the sheriff believed. Several posters on various Tallahassee and crime-related message boards have further claimed Vernon was on the cusp of being arrested for molesting Joy Lynn shortly before the crime, but these allegations lack supporting evidence, and no mention of prior sexual abuse is extant in any legitimate news source. The circumstances of the crime would lead you to believe it was pretty well thought out. It wasn't something spur of the moment where someone said, let's go kill 3 people. A curious state of affairs, certainly. During the initial investigation, Leon County authorities had vehemently denied any implication of sexual deviance, and then nearly half a century later, we learned Joy Lynn had been assaulted and a neighbor allegedly harbored a predilection for necrophilia. To conspiracy-minded armchair sleuths, this contradiction can mean only one thing: a cover-up, possibly at the behest of Vernon's father, a nationally renowned criminologist and Florida State University bigwig. Although I'm generally not a proponent of conspiracy theories, I will say the investigation into the Sims murders was particularly abysmal, and I'm not solely referring to the horde of looky-loos high-stepping through the crime scene. As appalling as such gore tourism seems in hindsight, such behavior was common at the time. The 9 days Helen Sims lingered on death's doorstep were a wasted opportunity. From the moment she entered Tallahassee Memorial, authorities broadcast the irreversible nature of her vegetative state. Leaked erroneous reports of Mrs. Sims' recovery would have furnished an effective pressure tactic and interrogation tool. The belief that Mrs. Sims was up and talking may have caused the assailants to flee town or confess in a bid for leniency. Yet if such a strategy was employed, I can find no evidence of it. A mere 3 years after the crime, in 1969, then Leon County Sheriff William Joyce told a reporter from the Panama City News-Herald that the crime would never be solved unless the perpetrators confessed. I don't think I've ever seen a law enforcement agency give up on solving a major crime so quickly. Whether this premature surrender was prompted by incompetence or malfeasance, it is impossible to say. I do know the perpetrator had to be sleeping easier knowing the sheriff's office had so readily admitted defeat. And that's so true. Why would they just give up and say, sorry, we're just never going to be able to solve this unless they confess? That's fucked up. Okay? Yet these tactical missteps pale beside the death blow inflicted upon the investigation in 1987. The power to solve the Sims murders may have been within Sheriff Campbell's grasp, and he swatted away the opportunity like a Florida mosquito. Vernon and Charlie married and left Tallahassee after the murders, but after their subsequent divorce, Charlie contacted Sheriff Campbell and requested an interview. During the interrogation, which was taped, Charlie allegedly admitted visiting the Sims home the night of the murders, but claimed to have no memory of the event. She instead preferred a version of the crime that had come to her in a dream or vision. He was very, very close to getting her to admit something, first responder Rocky Beavis said of Charlie. And of course, we saw clips of that interview in the documentary. Hold on one second. I feel like my paper got out of order here. Yep, hold on a second. I gotta just figure out the order here. Because I've gone straight into the comments, and I just want to make sure. I think I just messed up. So let me just go through these papers. There we go. There we go. Okay. I'm not going to be reading the comments tonight because it'll get too long. I just want to finish reading this part of the blog. Author and historian Henry Cabbage procured a copy of the interrogation tape from Sheriff Campbell, and earlier this year he played excerpts during a presentation on the Sims murders at the Tallahassee Historical Society. On Tallahassee O, a website dedicated to documenting corruption in Florida's capital, and an attendee of the Historical Society event claims that Charlie's dream recollections include the following statements. I went in there and looked at that body. My God, that kid with her clothes off lying on that floor. My God. How could he be turned on by something like that? How could he be interested in that ugly little girl? I was looking at the kid lying on the floor. That's the end of the quotes. Then, after hours of foreplay, the investigatory version of coitus interruptus. After the recitation of the dream, Charlie asks Sheriff Campbell what will happen if she admits to being in the Sims home during the commission of the crime, and the sheriff, a man with more than 2 decades of law enforcement experience at that point, tells the suspect, teetering on the edge of a confession, that she'll go to jail. So in other words, he fucked up. You only get one shot in this kind of case. I'm certain I have talked with the perpetrator many times, and it's just a case of who gives in first, said Sheriff Larry Campbell. In my 40-plus years on this planet, during my 3 years of law school, after reading hundreds of true crime books and watching more episodes of Cops than I care to admit, I have never ever heard a law enforcement officer so blatantly scuttle an interrogation. And I thought the same thing when I was watching it. For the uninitiated, although police officers aren't allowed to lie about offering immunity, the constitutionally permissible answers in such situations are A, I don't know what will happen if you admit to being in the house. I'm a cop, not a lawyer. Besides, I don't even know what you're going to tell me. I'll need more information before I can give you advice. B, I don't know what will happen, but I do know that whoever participated in the crime needs serious psychological help, and the best way for you to get that help is to tell me everything. Or C, criminal charges are within the purview of the DA's office, not the police department, but if Vernon committed this crime, he's a homicidal maniac, and you and your family are in grave danger. The best way for you to get the protection you need is to tell me exactly what happened. So in other words, the cop screwed up, and there were several different ways of interrogating this witness that he could have led her to give her a little push to confess. And he really didn't do that, because obviously just telling her she will go straight to jail is not, great incentive to confess. So not only did Larry Campbell act like he'd never conducted an interrogation before, he acted like he'd never even seen a police procedural on television. Even if feeble-mindedness prevented him from successfully skirting the constitutional issues, he should certainly have contacted the district attorney and brokered a plea deal for reduced charges in exchange for Charlie's testimony. Such agreements are commonplace. For Sheriff Campbell to imply leniency in exchange for cooperation is an impossibility, and that's ludicrous. If a conspiracy to protect Vernon from prosecution exists, Sheriff Campbell's inexplicable behavior during Charlie's interrogation is the best supporting evidence. I've done everything I think I can do. The big frustration is that I feel very confident that I know who did it, says Leon County Sheriff Larry Campbell to the Tampa Bay Times in 2006. Although the details of the crime and botched investigation have been known to me for some time, the cursory search for new information I performed the night before my friend's wedding divulged a new fact. Two new facts, actually. For the first time ever, certain message boards have published the suspects' real names, and I was off. My attorney said you gathered all this through public records. The suspects are named in public records, says author and historian Henry Cabbage on his rationale for publicly naming the suspects in the Tallahassee Democrat in 2015. My early morning obligations forgotten, I began scouring the web, snatching facts, and like a grocery shopper prepping for a panhandle hurricane. I began my research with Vernon's father, the famous criminologist, curious as to whether an academic could possibly have had sufficient clout to quash a murder investigation. A brilliant and progressive man, famous criminologist is quoted extensively in mid-century court cases and penal publications. The textbook he authored was the gold standard for an entire generation of law enforcement professionals. As I pored over old court decisions and newspaper articles, I gleaned no insight into whether or why his son may have murdered the Sims. But I did learn that he was a revered figure. Having such an esteemed scholar at Florida State University must have been considered quite a coup for the university. The existence of a conspiracy to shield Vernon from prosecution no longer seemed far-fetched. Vernon's father died in 2001, and the date of his death holds some significance. In a 1999 Tallahassee Democrat article, journalist Roseanne Dunkelberger described Sheriff Campbell as being coy about the identity of the suspects. But in the next chronologically available article, published in 2006, the sheriff provides enough biographical details to make the suspects' identities plain to Tallahassee natives. There was no radical change in libel laws between 1999 and 2006. I can't help but believe this loosening of Sheriff Campbell's lips was occasioned by Vernon's father passing. As the minutes turned to hours, I shifted my focus to the suspects themselves. Both have since remarried and live in Florida, although neither resides in Tallahassee. I secured Charlie's new married name through Intellius and then discovered her LinkedIn page and voter registration status. Property records are public, so I found her address and gawked at her home on Trulia.com. I don't know what I was looking for. No one confesses to murder on their LinkedIn page, but by God, I was looking. Both Vernon and Charlie are in their dotage now, and like many of their ilk, their cyber footprints are faint and far between. Despite spirited digging, well, that's changed now, at least as far as Vernon is concerned. Despite spirited digging, I was unable to determine Vernon's profession, but I ogled his domicile on Trulia, and I found the obituary of his second wife, a factory worker. As was the case with Charlie, I can find no evidence Vernon has ever been arrested. The sole blot on his record is a $145 speeding ticket from 2004, which he promptly paid. Further exploration led me to an obituary for his grandson, killed in a vehicular mishap at the age of 22. The two were apparently close. At the time of the grandson's death, they're listed as residing at the same address. According to the Tampa Tribune, the grandson was driving his motorcycle recklessly when he lost control and crashed into the side of a pickup truck. A very Florida death, or so it struck me at the time. Like Helen Sims, the grandson lingered long in the hospital, 2 weeks to Mrs. Sims' 9 days. Unlike Vernon and Charlie, information about the grandson is plentiful on the web. And it's here my digging took a decidedly unpleasant turn. Florida sunshine laws are my crack cocaine, apparently. The grandson, described by friends as a St. Pete legend, had an extensive arrest record, boasting 3 different mugshots and 27 legal entanglements since 2003. beginning at age 12. Although most of the offenses are minor, two of the arrests were domestic violence related, pertaining to two separate victims, one nearly twice the grandson's age. At this point, I have no idea what I was looking for. Perhaps an indication that grandson's criminality could somehow be linked to Vernon, but any concrete ties to the Sims murders had evaporated long ago. And yet, still, I panned for data in cyberspace, certain the next link I clicked would harbor the information I so desperately sought, whatever that information might be. A Facebook memorial page has been created in grandson's memory, and I read each and every comment, mentally correcting the poster's spelling and grammar as I scanned the page. I do that too. Then I unearthed a memorial YouTube video. A fellow biker does nothing but rev his engine until it belches black smoke, poisoning the ozone layer in grandson's memory. As the video ended and I scrolled down to read the comments, I remember thinking to myself, that's the Florida effect for you. In 3 generations, Vernon's lineage went from esteemed PhD to wife-beating hillbilly. And as I completed that thought, a noise outside my window startled me. It was birdsong, I realized. Morning had dawned, and my 5 a.m. alarm was scheduled to go off any minute. As I began to scramble out of bed, a wave of revulsion washed over me. What the holy hell had I been doing all night? Any big breakthrough in the Sims case will come courtesy of technicians in a forensic lab, not via a blogger gawking at the suspects' houses on Trulia from 1,000 miles away. A spokesperson for the Leon County Sheriff's Office claims the crime scene evidence is regularly resubmitted for testing, and Sheriff Campbell died last year. If a conspiracy to shield Vernon existed, and there is a fair amount of evidence to suggest one did, the sheriff was the last remaining link. And this gets more interesting later if you are into the conspiracy theory thing. Perhaps his passing will be the break the investigation needs. We're not giving up on the case. Sergeant James Tyson, head of the Leon County Sheriff's Office Violent Crime Unit, speaking of the Sims murders in the Tallahassee Magazine, May to June 2015 edition. Even if Vernon and Charlie are guilty, even if they went on to become the most prolific serial killer team in Florida history, I'm not going to see bodies buried in their basements on Google Street View. More importantly, regardless of his grandfather's guilt or innocence, grandson has no culpability in the Sims case whatsoever. He was born 26 years after the crime. To snigger at a dead 22-year-old's ill-chosen tattoos and extensive arrest record is crass, bordering on sociopathic. I was horrified. While I was looking into the Sims murders, the abyss was looking into me, and the elitism and malevolence I saw there appalled me. The worst enemy you can meet will always be yourself, Friedrich Nietzsche. I had a terrible time at my friend's wedding, incidentally, too exhausted from my long night violating the suspect's privacy to do anything but sit slumped on the sidelines. Now, every time I see a photo of myself at the ceremony looking like a hot-buttered death, it will be a reminder of the ugliness I saw peeking back at me from the mirrored abyss. Solving the Sims murders may be above my pay grade, but being respectful of other people isn't. The monster I should be hunting is the one that lives in my own psyche. So, that's the end of his blog. But where it starts to get really interesting is in the comments. But I think that's all I'm going to do for tonight. It's a lot of reading. And I have a lot more stuff to print out because this case does go on for a little bit more. But we made a lot of headway there tonight, and I'm glad. I wanted to get through that blog. I am going to put a link to the documentary, just in case anybody hasn't seen it, and to the blog I'm reading from in the description after the show. So if you have an interest in this case, you might want to go ahead and check it out on your own. And then next time, we're going to get into the comments, which are longer than the blog itself. And this is where it starts to get interesting because a lot of the comments are from people who lived in Tallahassee at the time of the murder and from one of the suspects themselves. And it gets interesting. So we'll talk about that more next time, maybe tomorrow night. So that's that. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I do find this a fascinating case, and I do not, also, myself, I do not understand why this case hasn't been solved. And I would agree. It sounds like it's a little bit of a cover-up to me. And certainly we know such corruption does exist within law enforcement. So it could be a cover-up. So that's that. I hope it wasn't too boring, me just reading, but like I feel that it was relevant, and I don't think I could have portrayed it, just by talking about it as well as this author of this blog did. And I just wanted to make sure that that got read as we discussed this case. You know, just because obviously somebody's interested in, funeral homes, especially back then, like, I'm sure it didn't take a lot to be seen as like really weird and different. I mean, can you imagine me back in the 60s? They would have locked me up. So that in itself isn't like such a huge deal to me or really like make me think that that makes them suspects just because, Charlie was a little strange. The fact that Vernon was suspected of being a peeping Tom, that makes it seem a little suspicious that he lived right behind them, but also his behavior online in recent years is what makes me sort of suspect him the most. How vehemently he's gone around online trying to clear his name. It seems a little suspicious. But we will talk about it more another night. So thanks for joining me tonight, you guys. I hope you all have a lovely Sunday evening. The rest of it, it's about 11 o'clock here in Louisiana. And if you're back to work tomorrow, have a great day at work. Have a great Monday. And if not, I'm sure I'll probably bump into you during the day. And I'm going to be, there might be some days where I'm going to do like a day stream and a night stream. Now that I'm going to be getting this new software, hopefully I can do some more fun stuff with it. And, I shouldn't be saying that. I have to focus on just trying to stream every day before I start trying to focus on doing more than one a day. Look at me getting all ahead of myself. Anyway, sleep well, guys. Be safe. Be good. Don't be too good, though. And, yeah, have a good rest. Hope you had a great weekend. And I will talk to you tomorrow. Make sure you tell your loved ones everything you want to say, because you never know which day is your last day or theirs. And don't let the demons bite. And until next time, I bid you adieu. Bonsoir. Good night, guys. I'm out. Poof.